At this time, Zach Atkins and Clayton Kosick will present the Pledge of Allegiance.
War on! Present on!
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
War on! Order on!
Please remain standing and join us in the singing of our national anthem.
War on! Present on!
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
You may be seated. It is with great honor that I get to stand here before you on this day before Veterans Day, in a way to be able to honor our veterans twice, to be able to give them a day in which we can say thank you for the service that they have presented for us. In a day that we can give them, Veterans Day, time for them to participate in activities with other veterans that happen throughout this city and throughout this community. Students of East Liverpool High School, before you are men and women who have wore the uniform in service of the United States. They wore that uniform in a time of conflict and in a time of peace. They wore that uniform out of choice or when the country asked them. That uniform represented to them a country that asked for their protection, a country that asked for their service. And whether that service was in a time of conflict and bearing arms, or if that service was in support of those who were in conflict or standing guard, they answered that call. They left their families. They put life on hold. They pressed pause while they ventured off. They did not know when that call would come or if it would, but they were ready. And for that, we say thank you. I want to say thank you personally to many of my friends that are sitting here. Officer Smith, fellow teacher, Mrs. Davis, Michael Hunt, Greg Todd, Glenn, Joe, I've known you my entire life. Mr. Arkaraji, and for those who yet I get to say hi, I want to say thank you. fellow teacher Mr. Adamson, fellow teacher Mr. John Fisher, who's in the back, and Josh Hissam, a former student of mine. I say thank you. How proud I am of what you've done, and how proud I am of how you continue to serve in our communities and to do what you've done. I say thank you, and hopefully today our students here will understand what service is about and understand that they too can pick this up. I apologize, Charlie, I see you sitting down there. I say thank you to you as well. Carl Sandburg once wrote a poem. It's called Grass. Pile the bodies high at Austerlitz and Waterloo. Shovel them under and let me work. I am the grass. I cover all. Pile them high at Gettysburg and pile them high at Ypres and Verdun. Shovel them under and let me work. 2 years, 10 years. And passengers will ask the conductor, what place is this? Where are we now? I am the grass. Let me work. Carl Sandburg's hopes were that grass could cover all and erase what war had done. And that's one good thing in healing, is that we are able to change. But I ask of you, the students, to learn what it takes to grant peace, and to grant a healing, and to grant the ability to have freedom. And for the veterans, I challenge you, please continue to teach us. Please continue to demonstrate to us. We may never live up to what you've done, but we will try. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you a gentleman who has lived up to that challenge, a gentleman whose life epitomizes that of service to community, a man whose life has been dedicated to the education of many, and who holds dear in his heart the service of America's veterans, Mr. Bill Hogue, Councilman, East Liverpool City.
Thank you, Jason, for that introduction and for your comments to the veterans and to the students. I want to begin today by thanking the school officials and the organizers of today's observance of Veterans Day, be it a day early or not. It's a real pleasure for me to be here and to offer a few words in honor of this occasion. Also, I especially want to thank those veterans of the community who've come out today in support of these activities. I know that many of you will be busy tomorrow with Veterans Day activities in the community and at your annual luncheon. So to make a special effort to be here today is something that should not go unnoticed. And finally, I offer a thank you to the East Liverpool students for your interest in observance of Veterans Day, and for your support of the service so many veterans have given over the years. I hope, too, that both students and veterans have had a chance to share some time and conversation over breakfast this morning. I do hope that my remarks today, though somewhat brief, will be of some interest and benefit to you all. Let me begin with a confession. You see, I personally never served in the armed forces, and I say this, as I always did with my students when I was a teacher here, because I do not want to mislead anybody into thinking that I ever fought in any war or even served in the military during time of peace. But as a student myself, I had a 5th grade teacher who served with the Marines in World War II. I had an 8th grade teacher who was a Korean War pilot, a 10th grade teacher who was a medic in World War II Pacific Theater, and I also had a number of colleagues who were veterans during my teaching career. But what I did do was teach social studies here at East Liverpool High School for 30 years. And this included over 7 months of travel and study in China and India. with us one moment. Technical difficulties beyond our control. Okay. So I taught here for over 30 years, and this included over 7 months of travel and study in China and India as a representative of our school and as a cultural ambassador from the U.S. to these other countries. So my missions overseas was a little different from that of soldiers sent for duty both in and out of combat zones. In my teaching career from 1971 to 2002, I had students go off to the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, the war in Bosnia, and other assignments. I retired just several months after the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center, so a number of my students went off to fight in Iraq and Afghanistan. Since these were my students, I was always especially concerned for their safety and well-being. Also, I served on the East Liverpool City Council for more than 10 years, from about 1990 until 2001. And then in March of this year, I was reappointed to the council and will serve for the next 2 years. So you could say that I have spent my whole adult life in service to the city and the schools. As a result, I've come here today to speak to you all on the subject of service. For veterans and others as well, service goes beyond the months and years they spent in the military. They can answer the question, what does it mean to serve others? Or to put your time, talent, and in many cases your treasure or money to use in the cause of something beyond just satisfying your own selfish pursuits. Here at East Liverpool High School, I taught a year-long course on the history of the world. Now, I understand we don't do history that way any longer, but in covering all of human history in one school year, we were able to see how topics play out over time. So, among other things, I taught about war throughout history, as well as the brief periods of peace that separate seemingly one war from another. So the peaceful ancient Egyptians were attacked by Hittites, and then themselves would conquer and seduce and subdue other people. The ancient Greeks two times fought off invasions from the Persians, only to end up fighting among themselves to their own ruin. Later, the Crusades. The religious and dynastic wars of the Middle Ages and the early modern age led to European efforts to conquer and subdue peoples in the newly discovered Americas, Africa, and Asia. Later on, Napoleon brought warfare to all of Europe in his quest to conquer it all. Then in the 20th century, 2 terribly destructive world wars left America triumphant, but with the uneasy task of trying to maintain order in the world since 1945. A daunting task indeed, and one that has led us to the present situation where we find men in uniform fighting in some part of the world practically all the time. Throughout it all, history has been a recognition of the sacrifices that are made in time of war, as well as the sense of commitment felt by warriors after the fighting has ended. These are universal sentiments, part and parcel of all wars of all time. In ancient Greece, Heracles, the leader of Athens, gave a famous funeral oration when the ashes of fallen warriors were brought home for reburial. He spoke of sacrifice and the obligation of the living to the dead. Centuries later, Abraham Lincoln expressed similar thoughts when he came to dedicate the Gettysburg battlefield. One of the more ironic phrases that Lincoln uttered that day was that the world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. Of course, while the greatest orators of the day spoke words long forgotten, just as Lincoln said it would be, his words, his own clear, concise speech, still rings through the ages. We do long remember what he said there. He said, "We cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. Rather, the brave men living and dead who struggled here have consecrated it." And then he goes on to say, "It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated to the unfinished task and work that they so nobly advanced." Ending with, "that they shall not have died in vain," seeing instead a new birth of freedom, and ending before us with government of the people, by the people, and for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Now, the last 10 years or so of my teaching career, I taught a course on the history of America and the world during the time of the war in Vietnam. It was my good fortune, and also my students, that a number of Vietnam veterans took a personal interest in the course of study and even assisted in the instruction of the class. In this way, these veterans were sharing their experiences with the next generation so that people would not forget, so that they would remember. Just as Lincoln had said more than a century earlier, "To be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that these dead shall not have died in vain." So it was their way of honoring their comrades in arms, those who were killed, wounded, or suffered in so many ways, as a result of their personal Vietnam experiences. I must add that none of these soldiers, turned civilians again, thought of themselves as heroes, or as what they did as particularly heroic. Often they described their actions as doing their duty, or helping their friends, or just doing what had to be done. It is little wonder then that upon return to civilian life, lots of soldiers became community leaders, politically and socially active, working with other veterans and veterans groups on community projects, as a band of brothers helping to build a better next generation, coaching teams, volunteering, raising scholarship funds, being church leaders, and with other organizations. They set about righting wrongs, paying it forward, and honoring their comrades in countless ways. This selfless giving is the major lesson I took away from my work with these veterans. I have the greatest respect and admiration for them. They have kept our country and all of us free. Veterans today go on serving the larger community. Without them, our community would not benefit as it does from the richness of their volunteerism, their fundraising, and their generous commitment to making our community a better place to live. For this, we should all thank veterans for their service in war and in peace, service to the nation and to the community, for their support of neighbors, friends, and family, and especially to those of us who count veterans among our family members. We must all thank you for the examples you have set for the rest of us. And students, I think you should ask yourselves today, what will be your service to family, to friends, to neighborhood, to school, community, and country? Ask what you can do to enrich somebody else's life, or to make things better for everyone, not just yourself. Thank you very much.
I hope that today, as we leave, we remember those remarks, take them to heart as to what we can learn from them. But don't take it just from Mr. Hogue or myself. I'd like to ask for the following to please come to the stage. Officer Smith, Mrs. Davis, Mr. Hissam, could you please come to the stage? We have asked these three to be representatives of the veterans here at East Liverpool, to be able to speak with you about not only what they do now, but how the military service has prepared them to re-enter into civilian life and to continue to serve. Officer Smith.
I was asked to take a few minutes to speak about my time in the military and how it prepared me for civilian service. But I'll have to go all the way back to my high school career in order to paint a complete picture. For starters, I was a terrible student here at ELHS. I was unmotivated, my grades stunk. My sophomore year, I had more detentions than there were school days left. I had to come to school in the morning and at night in order to take care of those detentions so I could graduate. After I graduated, I just kind of floated around, worked in a pizza joint, and eventually I went to a college that didn't seem to mind that my high school career was less than stellar. But it was about the time I was going to finish my second year of college that my divorced parents began to argue about who was going to pay for my school. And they were threatening to take each other to court, and it made me really mad. And so I thought, I'll show them, and I went and I joined the Air Force. I know that was a less than noble reason to join, but the joke ended up being on me. I really enjoyed the challenges and the structure and the mission-mindedness the military offered. I had never finished anything in my life, and here I was finishing basic training and then the much tougher police academy in the Air Force, and then on to Air Base Ground Defense School and M60 School. I was shown a side of myself I never thought could exist. I then got orders to my permanent base in North Dakota. The new me with an all-new mindset and skills. I'd never really won anything in my life either, and here I was getting job performance and quality control awards. And just a year prior, I could barely be trusted to take the trash out. From North Dakota, I ended up deploying to Panama, where I learned so much about service. We were sent there to support an operation called Safe Haven, Safe Passage. And this was a time when Fidel Castro allowed Cubans to take the boats, rafts, whatever they could get into, and just flee. He lifted any kind of sanctions, any kind of discipline on them. He said, take off. Guantanamo Bay got overflowed, and the Panamanian government agreed to take some of these Cubans. Ours was a security detail there in one of these mini camps, and it was there I had my eyes open to service and how simple it really was. These Cubans had left everything and had nothing except the bare necessities which were provided by the United States. Some of them only wanted to talk to an authentic American who could answer their questions about the U.S. We were kind of like, to them, we were a mythical place, and I'd actually been there, and I could share my experiences. Some just wanted simple English lessons where they would hold up an item such as an envelope, and I would say, envelope, and they would repeat, and they would hold up a toothbrush, and I would say, toothbrush. They appreciated that. I was able to obtain some Spanish to English dictionaries that they really loved. I had gum and candy sent from home, and it's amazing how when you have nothing, what a pack of gum becomes a real treasure. I found that I really loved meeting needs. It was so simple and so rewarding. After I got out of the Air Force, I came back to good old East Liverpool and eventually got a job at the police department. After meeting the physical, mental, and academic demands of the Air Force, I felt ready to meet any and all challenges. The lessons I learned in Panama were the most useful to me in civilian life. On calls, I often ask people, what can I do for you? Some things have spiraled so far out of control and there's so much dysfunction on calls, I can just simply say, what can I do here? And typically, I'm surprised how simple their requests are, just like Panama. Rarely does somebody request I move a mountain. Typically, it's just they need to be sent to a different resource, or I need to speak sense into someone, or someone just needs to vent. I will be forever grateful to the military for first molding me into someone I never thought I could be. They essentially grew me up. And secondly, for the lessons learned, especially about service and the joy and purpose it gives. I'm not sure I would have discovered those truths on my own. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Davis, and I'm the Career Tech Cosmetology teacher and swim coach. Many of you know me. I'm a U.S. Army veteran during peacetime. My job was 36 Lima, which is in the communications field. When I was your age, like many of you, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And like Officer Smith, I was not the perfect child, so I knew I didn't want to sit idly by, and I also knew I wanted to make a difference in life somehow. So at age 19, I joined the Army. I had such great respect for the military and all those who serve that I wanted to earn that respect as well. I learned very quickly that to earn that respect, I had to respect myself first. The military's helped me to become the person I am today by helping me realize what I'm capable of, both mentally and physically. It taught me to be strong and push myself farther than I ever thought I could go. It also taught me that no matter how many times people told me that I couldn't do something, I pushed myself harder to prove them wrong and to show them that I could. It's definitely helped me to become a better person than the wayward teen that I was when I joined. Teaching is the perfect job for me because I can help my students realize their potential, to let all of you know that you can do anything that you set your mind to, regardless of how many times you've been told that you can't. You are responsible for what you do, nobody else. Although it's been many years since I served, I'm grateful every day for the experience. Thank you.
My name's Joshua Hissam. I'm a firefighter downtown now. I didn't have a speech written down because I was in Kentucky when he called me to come up here, so I just drove up. I was in the Marines. I always knew I wanted to be a Marine when I was 3 years old. It's something I always wanted to do. My family has a construction company. Everyone in my family has done construction, including myself, but I was the only one that kind of veered off and did my own thing. I'm back now. But as a scout sniper in the Marines, 6.5 years active duty. I lived 3 years in Iraq. I embedded with Iraqis, lived in a couple different cities. Was fluent in Arabic, probably a little choppy now. It's been a while. But we did a thing called transition teams over in Iraq, where we embedded with Iraqis and we tried to train them. We would live with them, we would eat when they eat, we'd sleep when they slept. And we try to set them up to where they can self-sustain themselves. I don't know if you guys seen a movie, American Sniper. We're in some of the same cities as he was. I didn't know the guy, but I was in the same time frame he was. When he was phasing out, I was phasing in Ramadi. But it's not all Hollywood like that. There's a lot of downtime, a lot of nothingness. It's not all Hollywood. But it's something I enjoyed when I got out. I mean, I came back to do construction, and I ended up being a firefighter. I enjoy that very much. The military's taught me a lot of bearing, gave me direction, and taught me how to conduct myself. I highly recommend if you're not sure where you want to go or what you want to do, military is always a good option. Helps you get yourself straight and in line to make better decisions later in life. So if that's what you want to do, do it. If you're unsure, do it anyways. All right.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, guys. I have to admit it was very interesting having Josh in class and teaching him and some of his friends. John Walker, who also joined the Marine Corps, and Josh Stansberry, who's also known as Sandman with the UFC, or UWA, whatever that Ultimate Fighting is. That was an interesting class, to say the least, with all those guys in the same room. We have a very special two guests that we'd like to bring out at this time. You might know them, Mr. Briar Meeks, Mr. Devin Brown.
I just want to thank all the veterans here today for their service. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my choice to join the U.S. Army. My name is Briar Meek, and I'm a senior at East Liverpool High School. During my junior year, I made the decision to join the service. I've spoken with recruiters from the Army and the Marines. I chose to join the United States Army. It was always a dream of mine since I've been a little kid to join the military. I've always looked up to my dad. He was in the United States Army. He was deployed overseas in Iraq in 2003 after 9/11. I feel like everyone should have to serve their country. It shows the veterans the respect they deserve for their service to the country. I I turned 18 a couple weeks later. I was up at MEPS getting my physical and enlisting. Everyone told me there's no rush, but I knew that it was what I was truly wanted to do. My MOS I chose is infantry. I want to be in the infantry because ultimately I would like to become an Army Ranger because I feel it will benefit me when I get out of the service. My goal after my Army service is to get into the FBI, DEA, and being a former Army Ranger should help me get into the FBI, DEA. Also, I will need a college degree and the Army will pay for it. Thank you. And my leave date is June 7th.
I'd like to thank all the veterans here today. Thank you for your service. Hi, I'm Devin Brown, and I'm senior here at East Liverpool High School. And I've recently enlisted in the United States Army National Guard. And it is the best feeling in the world to know you're in the military and you get to serve your country, serve your community, serve your state. Just the amount of discipline you get from the military and just everything they allow you to do, like explore the world, defend the people you love and you care for. I've only been in for about a month now, and I definitely know I haven't seen things you guys have seen. Maybe I will one day, maybe I won't, but it's just, we all join for the same thing. We love our country, we want to defend our country. And just, yeah, sorry, I'm very nervous. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, right now my MOS is 25 uniform. I'm a signal support specialist. I work on computers, signal support, of course, just everything communications, basically. Going through all this isn't really easy. MEPS, I couldn't take MEPS. It was the worst thing I've ever done. They have you do some weird things down there. But like I said, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. I ship out June 27th for basic training at Fort Jackson, and then I also go to Fort Jackson for my AIT. And I just can't wait to get this over with and truly be in the military. Thank you guys.
We have done the impossible here today. We have done something that Mrs. Kaiser said I could never do. We're ahead of schedule. And this is one of Mrs. Kaiser's worst fears, too, because it's now my turn to stretch. No, not at all. I just want to say thank you to the audience here today, and I want to commend everyone who has participated today. The two young gentlemen who spoke to you have told you about their selection of service and why and what it means to them. Please know that we hold service very dear, but if the military service is not for you, there are so many ways that you can serve your country. There are so many ways you can serve your community, and it doesn't have to wait until you're 18. You can begin by joining organizations here to understand your service, whether it's a church organization, whether it is many of our school organizations that provide community service and outreach. Please take your steps now to find out about that. And it's never too early for you to begin your research as to how to make you a better person for tomorrow. As you've heard from our veterans that stood here and spoke to us, that made a giant change in their life. Your change remains to be unseen, but it starts with the first step, and that step that you are responsible for yourself. And together, we can make a giant change. By serving one another, that change will last a lifetime. To bring our presentation to a conclusion, I'd like to invite back to the stage the East Liverpool High School Choir. At this time, I ask for escort Miss Stacy, escort Mr. Davidson to please escort our veterans to the hallway. Ladies and gentlemen, as these men and women are proceeding out, please let them know your appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, you please have a seat. Our student council members. Student council members, may we have a few of you please report to the back of the room. There are some boxes there. As we exit this building, we ask that you please place your flags into the boxes that the student council members will be holding. We also ask, ladies and gentlemen, as you leave, the veterans are in the hallway. Please take a moment to personally thank these men and women for what they've done. You've heard them speak. You've heard the guest speaker with his comments. It's now up to you. Can you take that torch and pass it on? And can you show true appreciation? We'll be dismissing from the back of the room, center rows first. The center row first, please. Student council, if you would please help with the dismissal of the students from the back center row.